So we went along until the bitter end, and it was very bitter because they said I should shoot it both ways. They were so beautiful that the whole world believed their bodies were perfect. But the truth was far more terrifying. During Hollywood's golden age, there were stars who stepped onto the silver screen with an immortal smile. But as soon as they left the spotlight, they collapsed from pains that even doctors couldn't explain. One actress had to perform seductive scenes while her internal organs tightened as if being torn apart. A comedy legend trembled from a disease that attacked the very thing he was best at: movement. And there was someone so beautiful that she seemed invincible. But inside her body operated like a faulty machine carrying disorders no one could pinpoint. These bizarre diseases not only tormented them, but also quietly shaped their personalities, scandals, and the tragedies that the audience witnessed. And now it's time to uncover the 15 most mysterious curses of Hollywood. Let's explore Marilyn Monroe, the soul-stealing disease of a star who was not allowed to hurt. If anyone lived two lives in one body, it was Marilyn Monroe. On screen, she was the dazzling dream of an era. But behind the scenes, especially between 1956 and 1961, her fate was like a cruel performance. Each time she stepped onto the red carpet, it was another time she hit the pain that cut deep into her bones. Hollywood wanted Marilyn to be beautiful, bright, eternal, and in pain was something that was not allowed to exist. So when she collapsed after a scene at Fox Studios in 1959, the press only wrote that she was tired. No one wondered why would a young, healthy woman at the peak of her career be clutching her stomach, gasping for breath as if she had just escaped death. The answer lies in a disease that no one understood at the time: endometriosis. Memoirs of those who worked with Marilyn recount moments when, while shooting, she would suddenly freeze her eyes, lifeless as if drifting elsewhere. The crew thought it was her erratic behavior, but today doctors say it was a hormone shock caused when uterine tissue grows in the wrong place and clamps down on the nerves like an invisible vice. What no one knew was that the pain Marilyn endured was comparable to breaking bones. And it wasn't a one-time event. It happened weekly. Yet the press of that time, like the Los Angeles Mirror in March 1960, described her as fragile and emotional. They had no idea that each smile, each sultry glance from Marilyn was built on sheer will to survive. But here's the strangest part. The more pain she felt, the better she performed. Analysts call this the compensatory effect of the famous. When the body is knocked down, the mind creates a super Marilyn version, more seductive, more enchanting, as if the pain was transformed into light. The cost drug dependency not to feel pleasure, but to stand tall. Each pill didn't make Marilyn high. It simply helped her keep her shape when her body was about to collapse. The climax of this tragedy came in 1961, when Marilyn was secretly hospitalized because the pain was so intense she couldn't get out of bed. That was the moment the disease took almost the rest of her soul. But Hollywood still demanded she return and continue playing a woman who never hurt. And the harsh truth in Marilyn didn't die because of scandal nor depression as the rumor suggested. She died from 10 years of continuously playing a role where she was not allowed to admit her pain. And what's frightening is Marilyn wasn't the only star betrayed by her body. At another corner of Hollywood around the same time, Marilyn was fighting invisible pain. Another legend was stepping into his own peculiar battle. The man who made the world laugh but trembled from a disease that struck at the very thing he was best at: movement. That man was Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin, the disease that made the master of movement lose his body. For more than half a century, Charlie Chaplin made the world laugh with just a raised eyebrow, or a shrug, or his signature spinning walk of the... But little did anyone know that by the late 1960s, right in the middle of the longest standing ovation in New York, he felt the scariest thing of all. His body no longer obeyed his commands. Chaplin wasn't afraid of wrinkles or aging. What he feared and had whispered to his family was, "The day my legs betray me." For Chaplin, his body was his tool, his language, his wings to soar above all life's tragedies. Losing it was like losing his identity. The first symptoms appear quietly around 1966 at his mansion in V, Switzerland. Chaplin was walking in the garden when suddenly his right leg froze, stiff as if frozen in place. A few seconds later, it started moving again. He thought he had tripped on a rock. But then it happened again, more frequently, more unervingly. Today, this disease is known as freezing episodes. But at the time, no doctor could understand it. What was most bizarre was that the disease didn't follow the logic of aging. It wasn't gradually weakening. It didn't follow a linear degeneration. It came in harsh waves. 1 week Chaplin could walk normally. The next he stumbled as if controlled by a string. Many Swiss doctors checked him, but no one could make a definitive diagnosis. A local newspaper in 1972 wrote, "Chaplin seems very emotional, his hands shaking when receiving awards." But his loved ones understood it wasn't emotion, it was the disease. One of the most memorable moments occurred at the honorary Oscar ceremony in 1972. When Chaplin stood up before the hall, the longest standing ovation in Hollywood history followed. But as he stepped off the stage, his left hand suddenly jerked and his right leg froze for half a second. To the audience, it seemed like a minor detail. But for those who understood the disease, it was a clear signal Chaplin's body was losing control. What was chilling was that Chaplin intentionally let people misunderstand. He once said, "I'd rather have them think I'm emotional than weak." The disease seemed to have a vendetta against him. It struck precisely at the thing he was best at: delicate movement. It hit the most sensitive part of a man who lived off his body. It was a cruel blow. By the end of the 1970s, Chaplin had to move in a wheelchair. But unlike other elderly people, his decline wasn't ordinary. It was like a great invention, short-circuiting, sometimes working, sometimes failing, sometimes strong, sometimes cutting off suddenly. Medicine of the time had no answers, and Chaplin remained silent, accepting his body as an old friend slowly slipping away. And strangely, while Chaplin was struggling to hold on to each step, in another corner of Hollywood, a completely different icon was battling an even more bizarre curse. A body so beautiful, it seemed supernatural, yet frozen from within after years of war starvation. That icon was Audrey Hepburn. Audrey Hepburn, the strange disease that left her forever stunted. To the world, Audrey Hepburn was the epitome of purity. Wide doe eyes, a slender figure like an angel stepping out of a painting. But few knew that her gossamer-thin beauty was actually the result of a medical tragedy, a war-induced trauma that never went away. In 1944, when she was just 15, Audrey lived in the Netherlands during the horrific months of the winter hunger. She, along with millions of others, had to eat turnipses, potato skins, and sometimes nothing at all. Those months didn't just make her hungry. They froze her body's development forever. A family doctor once said Audrey's body stopped it at her teenage years. It never recovered. That's something Hollywood never knew. When Audrey stepped onto the set of Roman Holiday in 1953, people would say, "She's as beautiful as an angel." But no one understood that this beauty wasn't a gift. It was a mark left by a body that had been malnourished for so long that her hormones and digestive system were forever out of sync. Audrey's body was like a young plant snapped in half. It still lived, still thrived, still beautiful, but could never fully grow. Paramount Studios' doctor admitted that Audrey couldn't absorb nutrients like a normal person. No matter how much she ate, she couldn't gain weight, couldn't store energy. Each time filming went on for hours, Audrey would lose 3 to 4 kilograms from a mere cold. And the strange symptoms didn't stop there. While filming Funny Face 1957, the crew reported mornings when Audrey arrived on set with hands as cold as ice and lips turning pale. She shook uncontrollably, not from the cold, but from a metabolic shock. Her body's blood sugar would suddenly drop, something no one had researched back then. The press didn't understand, so they wrote that she was too sensitive to the weather. The truth was her body was only operating at 60% of a normal adult's capacity. Once while filming a dance scene, Audrey suddenly froze and sat down on the wooden floor. A French newspaper in 1960 called it Audrey Hepburn's feminine weakness. But if any scientists had been there, they would have seen it was her body's way of reacting to the lack of nutrients by shutting down temporarily. Exhaustion. Suddenly. No warning. The strangest thing about Audrey's condition wasn't just her body. It was how it shaped her entire image. Everything that the audience loved about Audrey, her small shoulders, big eyes, delicate face, was a result of years of deprivation, hunger, hormone imbalance, nutritional deficiencies. This fragility made her character shine with a soft, protective light, making audiences not just look at her, but want to protect her. Audrey would never grow up, not in a metaphorical sense, but in the literal biological sense. But in that she became an icon of beauty that came not from perfection, but from a body that had survived war. And while Audrey carried a beauty preserved by hunger, another Hollywood queen bore a body that looked lick,